Okay, so can we say we're back? Is it?
I would say it. I would say it. I haven't said it so long. I would say it. We're back.
We're back. Actually, 100% back for the first time.
All 5 of us.
We're back, but it's digital. We're digital back because now the Subjectively crew doesn't all live in the same building anymore. So we have to telecommunicate. It's good. We had to all be here for today's recording because today's recording is in celebration of us reaching 50,000 subscribers. That actually didn't sound right when I said it all out, but no, we are at 50,000 subscribers.
That's so many. Imagine you're one person and you're standing like on top of a table or something and you're like, let's talk about drawing. And then there are that many people in the room and they're all like, yeah, I'll listen.
People. That's crazy. But thank you guys all so much.
Remember when we hit 1,000? I think we're gonna do like a t-shirt giveaway.
Yeah, we did a t-shirt
we tried to
giveaway.
do that, and no one we messaged responded
to it. No one wanted t-shirts.
We have a smelly t-shirt waiting to be handed out to someone. So
we actually left it in our last apartment. We are going to be doing more character critiques of your designs. So we each picked our own character out of the, I want to say hundreds that we got. Exactly 50,000. But we really did get a lot, so we picked a very small ratio of that. And we're just going to go around and give some mild critique. We're not going to do anything crazy here, not do anything harsh.
Nothing spicy.
Subjectively roasts their subscribers?
Subjectively beats the shit out of their fans.
We could too.
We can.
It'd be easy.
10,000 for each of us.
You're pathetic.
Okay, so I think we're gonna do it. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first, I guess.
Oh, go for it.
So I really loved seeing everyone's art. It was fantastic, and I'm always so blown away whenever we do this because people bring so much to the table, and it's fantastic. The one that really caught my eye as a fantastic candidate for critique was by Stephanie. So thank you very much, Stephanie. She submitted her superhero OC, Psyche. She specifically said that Stephanie wants to be a graphic novelist, but she's pretty new to character and costume design, so she specifically wants to focus on that. Only context she gave us is that the story takes place in a more modern setting, so she wanted a simple costume that someone could make with cheap materials, which makes me think she's thinking wants people to cosplay her OCs, which is that's the dream, right?
That's good foresight there. I like that.
Right away, I think it's a really cute and appealing design, but I think there's a lot that can be improved. So it looks like this character has telekinesis powers. I can only assume from looking at this that the necklace is what gives her powers, since there's the reference for with the necklace and without the necklace, and the hair change kind of, the change of the color indicates the power, a la Danny Phantom or something. Which totally, that works. I think that's actually a really good device. There's a video game called Celeste that does that, I think, and it's just a really cool visual way to indicate, something new is happening here. So I think that's a good idea. But looking at the character, without any information, I wouldn't guess that telekinesis was involved at all. I think with the superhero design, it definitely helps if you can look at them and automatically get a sense of what their powers might be. Hulk, him strong.
I thought he had green powers.
Green powers?
The Hulk is a wizard.
There is a middle ground between literally just being my superhero power is strong and I'm muscular, and then not being able to translate your character's power through their design.
I want to backtrack just a little bit on the necklace. I definitely think that's a good device, and you can definitely work different plot points around, oh my god, I don't have my necklace with me, or can I get the necklace in time, or whatever, but I think it needs to be a little more visually important, because it's a pretty simple design right now, and if that's the main trigger thing happening to transform Andromeda into Psyche, you could clue the viewer in to that a little bit
for
more.
sure. It also looks like she has face morphing powers. That would be super cool just to see if the character has face morphing powers. I want to see you do exercises where you see what the extent of that is. You see, do you want the character just to look like the same character? Do you want it to look different?
When I think of face morphing, I think of like Tonks from Harry Potter, where she likes to screw with people or entertain people. But the other thing is like you could have a whole different side of the personality where it's like you're trying to deceive people, you want to get away with something, you're trying to hide something. So like, is she doing this kind of stuff to be playful? Is she doing this kind of stuff to be malicious? So that kind of can be implied through her face and her expressions with that power.
How do you think you can show telekinesis more clearly through visual?
Oh, I mean, that's...
Ain't that just the question?
I know a lot of characters who have telekinesis have like their forehead exposed.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. I was trying to
like Eleven from Stranger Things and was it Tetsuo from Akira? Not that you have to change her hair too drastically, but...
Well, it'd be kind of cool if maybe instead of a necklace, she had like a hair clip or something. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. Pushed her bangs aside.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at this.
There could definitely be some kind of, she has a habit where I think the other sheet for when she's not in her superpower form, she's a bookworm, right?
Yeah.
So she's like,
Levitating
she has her
book.
bangs, she's always kind of like hiding behind a book or behind her bangs or something.
Yeah.
But when it's time to get down to business, she like pushes her hair back, pushes it up either with a clip or a headband or something.
Think Violet. Yeah, Violet at the beginning of The Incredibles and Violet at the end of The Incredibles.
Is she more confident when
There you
she's
go.
the hero?
It sure looks like it from the pose, right?
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense.
We talked a lot about other stuff, but what about the outfit? Because this person specifically wanted to know what they could do with the outfit. And it's really interesting because like I get a good sense of her like sweet, kind of shy personality through her like everyday Andy outfits. But that's kind of lost with the Psyche outfit.
I think that Claire had a good point in saying that if you want to keep the rest of her design pretty simple, you could draw more attention to her necklace by making that a little bit more interesting in one way or another. You could make it bigger, make it so that it's not just a black line as the chain around her neck. That could be an actual, little baubles or, an actual chain or something.
Yeah, whatever the accessory is, just make it more fantastical.
Oh, wait, hold on. There was one last suggestion that I had to imply telekinesis that's really easy, that is one of the first things I think of when I think of telekinesis, and it has to do more with posing than design. But if you literally just have like an outstretched hand, that's like the universal, like I'm doing psychic powers.
Novelist, so everything you just said applies to that too. Like comics, you're drawing the same character over and over and over and over. It needs to be simple.
Maybe something you could do with the outfit though, just because you can definitely keep it very simple and you should definitely stick with that. It kind of looks like you're almost going in a Brian Lee O'Malley sort of direction as far as stylization goes.
If you wanted her superhero alter ego to be a foil to her everyday outfit, in her everyday outfits you have her in like hoodies and covered up and kind of shy. Even if her dress was sleeveless, she's like more confident, she's more okay with being out there. I think that would make a big like visual difference. But yeah, so I really enjoyed this character and I just see like endless potential with it, and I hope this helped.
All right, who wants to go next?
I could go next.
All right, Claire's going next.
I was really excited for this one, actually.
So the submission I want to talk about, I thought it was a really cool concept. It is coming to us from Krabby Man.
I like that. I really like that name.
I don't have a name. I hope you're okay with going by the alias Krabby Man. If you're out there, Krabby Man. I think that your character is really interesting and unique. It came with a little description. His character is Dollface, and Dollface belongs to a world that is set in a robotic 1920s Brooklyn. Yeah, right? Already a cool premise that you don't see a lot. Dollface was previously a damaged soldier unit, but he became a boxer unit. He was repaired by two mechanics that needed to pay off a protection fee from a local gang, so they bet on Dollface to win fights and gain money. Dollface has 3 personality cores in him that all contain 3 unique personality AI.
What I'm seeing here is that it's got like a power-hungry, hard-hitting personality named Dawn. Then we got the happy-go-lucky, charitable personality that controls swiftness, which is L. And then the last core is a blank slate core with no emotions or personalities, and they control Doll's movement, and that's 10. First of all, I like the names of these cores, Dawn, L, and 10. Those are nice, snappy, clever little names. So basically, it's like it's got 3 different personalities, so to speak, but I guess calling them cores is more appropriate because it's a robot.
It actually specifies between the personality cores that 10, which is the blank one that doesn't have any personality or emotion, was the original, and then Dawn and L were added. And the 3 personalities were all originally separate soldier units, and they don't know why they were combined into the body that is Dollface. So it's really interesting because the story is already set up to have this psychological element, but also this very pressing, urgent physical element where he needs to keep winning fights in this underground Brooklyn fighting ring. So there's a lot of potential here. We don't have any information about the kind of story or the format of the story that Dollface is a part of, if he wants it to be like a graphic novel or a movie or a TV show or anything, but there's a lot of possibilities here already. Having such a complicated character, though, definitely presents challenges for visually explaining all of that, because there's just so much going on. First off, though, I do really like the way Dollface looks. I think that's a really, especially the mask, it's just this like caricature of a happy carnival mask on this. It almost looks like Rock'em Sock'em Robot's body.
Yeah, definitely got that vibe.
I really enjoy the way this is rendered.
Yeah.
I think the dark shadows are so cool, and something about the sketchy illustration style does, like, you know, the line work, that kind of thing.
The cool thing about creating that setting in the 20s where everything's a robot is you kind of get to decide what all the visual conventions for this world are. You get to decide what a robot is in this world, because obviously it's more humanoid. They're like intelligent life. Are there humans in this world? Is everything a robot? What does it mean that this was a soldier unit? You just have so many questions to answer as you're setting up the story. Really, I really do like Dollface's design, but I do have a couple questions, I guess.
If the character does have different masks for the different personalities, I think that'd be a good idea.
Each personality has a face, and each face is on a different side of the head. So when he gets punched,
that's what I was
it
thinking.
spins
We
around.
just did that in the League video.
But it would work in this situation too. But it could also be like, you know, those toys where you press down on their head and it rotates, so you don't see all 3 of them at the same time.
Oh, that's cool.
But there's like a separate mechanism inside like the casing of the head, and when there's pressure applied on the top, it like clicks down and it switches over.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna talk about too, especially if this is a character meant to be animated eventually. The specific movement of those toys is so creepy because it's kind of slow and snappy at the same time, which would be perfect for this boxer that's struggling between 2, maybe 3 personalities. I'd say maybe the thing I would change is maybe just get a little more specific with a couple things. Like we said before, we do really like the motion and the mark making in how a lot of this is rendered, but like the knees right now are kind of ambiguous nuts, I guess, and then they just have the bolts in there, and then the feet are kind of just bricks.
Those are some Blitzcrank feet right there.
They just look a little not considered, not thought out. So maybe just think about some specific like hardware that could be a part of Dollface. Think about
Or boxing.
how
boxing
different
boots.
things connect.
I was just about to ask,
Oh,
do
yeah,
boxers
they
wear
have
shoes?
boots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they wear
do.
boots.
They're kind of cool.
Yeah, the lace-ups, right?
Yeah, that's definitely something worth looking into, is specific boxing gear, and also referencing specific mechanical things from that time period.
Specifically 20s boxing gear too, because I'm sure like that looks different.
But yeah, I think that reference would go a long way here. I mean, this, you might not want it to look realistic, but for things to be a little bit more convincing, like I wouldn't believe that those knees bend per se, because when you're making something mechanical and there's a joint, you really got to convince me that it's a joint. Even if that's just like a horizontal circle, it could be that simple. But that kind of looks like those pipes that make up his legs kind of go into that and then come out the other side. And I'm not really sure how they would bend. Maybe the pipes themselves can bend. But I would suggest just referencing some simple mechanisms to get an idea of, like, you know, more convincing joints.
Definitely try and come up with a specific like system for Dollface, because if he's in a world filled with other robots and even other specifically fighting robots, you're going to run into issues with all of the characters looking too similar if you only have this vague visual information that's like kind of mechanical, but kind of just like doing human proportions and kind of giving them this texture that's like, you know, it's like pipes and kind of nuts and bolts, but it's gonna look very redundant and it's gonna look confusing if you have all these characters who have the same generic robot features.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it would be nice if the idea of the boxing mechanics came in. Like, I think of the bell right away, and maybe the bell in the boxing could be like a motif. Like maybe they have a bell on their chest or something like that.
That shoulder pad
or the shoulder
seems
pads.
really good.
I was also thinking like old timey cash register. For the chest. I'm thinking of Robots, 2005. I mean, honestly, that movie would be good to look at, because I imagine that all these other characters would be based on different things too. And then if, like, I don't know what the setup for the world is, but maybe when people made them or these other robots made them, they had to like modify things that already existed, and that just gives a little bit more history to all the characters.
Yeah, I think you could play more with asymmetry too, because we are supposed to get the impression that this guy is kind of scrapped together, like reforged. So there's something you can use to imply that it would be, you know, one arm is a little bit longer than the other, or there's some parts on this side that it doesn't have on the other side. You know, play around with that a little bit, and it would give it a feeling. Because this kind of looks like it was built to box, but it wasn't built to box. It was built to be a soldier, and they repurposed it. So, you know, make it look like someone threw it together and added parts on. And I think asymmetry would help with that a lot.
Also, just a little bit of wear and tear, because it was this unit that was out on the battlefield, and one way or another it was decommissioned from the battlefield. It was damaged, and now it's a boxer unit. So maybe if we could see some of that damage, and it doesn't have to be like a literal crack in the mask, but just something that lets us see a little bit of the history of the character.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, it's hard because the way that this person is rendering the character is already very scratchy, and it kind of implies wear with just that, but I think more deliberate damage shown in the character's design would be a good idea.
I remembered, so the kind of the round shapes and the color scheme reminded me of that game
Atomic Heart.
Yes, so see how they approach similar aesthetics.
Atomic Heart is definitely supposed to be, as far as era goes, more like 50s and 60s, but it's still good to reference just to get a better idea of how they do like joints and stuff on mechanical characters. Dollface is a great idea. All right, who would like to go next?
I could go next. I'll dive in. So I went with Ratman by Kayle. Kayle submitted a character. What they wrote was, I call him Ratman for now because he doesn't have a name yet. His story isn't developed enough, so I'd like critique on his clothes. What can I do to make them more interesting? I'd like to keep the original idea, aka his big coat, because he lives in a cold climate. The coat staying red isn't necessary. That's just an overlay filter. Realistic colors are more ideal. Okay. So we got a character who lives in a cold climate, doesn't have too much of a story yet.
I would guess if they don't have much to tell you, then the world has to be kind of similar to ours, if there wasn't anything
That's
they
true.
thought was worth putting in an email.
I'm getting a lot of Samurai Jack vibes from this design.
Oh yeah.
In the stylization and just the intensity, like the middle ground between the intensity of the character's personality and the stylization of the character.
The red overlay filter also is pretty Samurai Jack.
Yeah, and there's the solid black hair.
I know they didn't want to keep the red overlay filter, but I actually really like the coat being red.
They should.
And then
I do too.
think about it being red in the snow.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Really
Yeah, that'd be
intense,
so
very
cool.
Red on white
Yeah.
always looks cool.
Red like really stands out as a main character and also implies a lot. This character definitely looks, you know, kind of menacing. I don't know if it's just their face, but it's definitely the expression of just some sort of darker secret. Like, we don't know the whole story about this character. They're not wearing their heart on their sleeve. They're very protected.
The kind of pushed back hairline, receding hairline combined with the really heavy brow is telling me that this is a character that spends a lot of time either being gloomy or stressed out, but also lost in thought. So I don't know if there's some kind of scholar or a scientist, or if they do lots of calculating. But they seem kind of like a passive character in a world that maybe is a little bit more chaotic.
It's funny, it actually has both of the things that we were talking about with telekinesis, with the exposed forehead
Yeah.
and the hands
It
and the
does.
outstretch. Exactly what we were talking
Crossover.
about. So I would infer some sort of psychic, some sort of power with that outstretched hand and that very focused stare.
But I guess to touch on the design for clothing, it's so, you know what, it's a difficult one because we don't have very much information about this, but
Yeah.
for a cold
I
climate,
have one big fat thing to say. Needs shoes. Just seeing this isolated, I think the shoes are an interesting opportunity to express the character that you're just not using at all.
yeah, Ayla, you were speaking right to me. I love shoes, you know that. Yeah, shoes can say so much about a character, which is cool because like if all the jackets are long in this world and they're like, you know, always covered up, like maybe their jackets aren't all that detailed, but the shoes are really telling of like,
That's cool.
I don't know, they're the groups they belong to, or I don't know, like whether they're friend or foe.
Yeah, if it's a world where it's really wintry, or at least where this person is, it's really wintry and cold out, it could even be like a class thing. Like if you don't really have to go outside, then you don't need these massive winter boots, or if you do have to be outside all day, you do need these like working class heavy duty snow boots or
Yeah. Spikes.
I'm thinking spikes.
And if that's the case, then you really don't need to mess around with coats that much. Like, I think that the simplicity of this coat would make more sense if it brought you down to these shoes that then informed you more about the character than anything else in the design.
I mean, you could also do something cool with like buttons on jackets. Like, I mean, there's so many ways to like close up a jacket. Like, there's zippers.
If you wanted to play with the silhouette, the coat is an opportunity to really influence the silhouette. You could do like a belt around the waist if you wanted to make it like 2 different shapes instead of 1, like that kind of thing.
I think that's another thing that's giving us this serious vibe from him, other than his facial expression, is his silhouette is literally like pretty much a straight rectangle with a little bit of, yeah, he's like, it's like Snape. It's like, you know, the long straight robe. And so if you want that implication, then I don't think you would need to change much about this. I think that if this character is the way that we're interpreting him as, very serious, straightforward, no goofing around, headstrong, all that kind of stuff, then maybe this is as complicated as it needs to get, and then you could get more creative with gloves or boots or hair or something else.
the coat. Just a little like decal could go a long way. If this is someone who works for a company, maybe there's just like 3 letters or a little logo either on the front, or there's a patch on the shoulders or something.
Imagine
some
what a
kind of little
difference it would make if this character had a button that was like Free Glomps XD. Just like on the lapel. Like, seriously though, like
That's
that
true.
something like that can have such a huge influence. That's such a good point, Claire.
It's true. That's true.
Also, just, I mean, we already been talking about shoes like for an hour now, but snowshoes are also so completely different looking than what shoes are traditionally visually look like. You know what I mean? Like, snowshoes are just like,
Yeah.
waffles with spikes on them, like...
Yeah, they're like tennis rackets.
Yeah, I was gonna say, give him tennis rackets.
Like, you could make these really cool. I mean, they look really stupid now, but you could make them look cool.
Okay, I'll go next. So I picked Aquila the Eagle, submitted to us from Dan. So I picked Aquila because I think this has enough in its concept that got me interested, but a lot of the execution I felt like needed some more thought put into it. So I picked it because I wanted to be able to talk more about concept here than execution. I feel like this person has a pretty good grasp of whatever medium they're using. Looks like digital, and you know, anatomy is pretty good. There's some issues here and there. So really more the issues with this design for me come with the concept. I feel like I've seen designs like this very, very often. The first thing that comes to mind is Digimon, and then I think about can't not think about League of Legends. Yu-Gi-Oh! That's the other thing I was thinking of.
Yeah, of course.
But just
Yu-Gi-Oh! Right away.
It's kind of an issue. The center of attention for this design is really just the woman's body, and there isn't a lot of concept outside of that, which is the part of it that makes me think of League of Legends. The description is pretty succinct. So it's kind of a superhero character. They have an alter ego. Their alter ego's name is actually Altaria Denby. And the description I got was a 4-winged harpy with a gift of heaven's eye, allowing her to see in great distance through objects and everything unseen and undetectable by the human eye. So I think there's a lot you could do with this. I feel like the description has a lot more potential than what I'm seeing in the design. So the first thing that really caught me was that she has the gift of heaven's eye, but it took me a really long time to actually find this character's eye when I was looking at it. And then eventually I finally did it, and there's really nothing special about it. And I think that the first thing you could do is just play that up, because I wouldn't guess that's character's superpower. I mean, I see flight, I see bird talons, and really not much else. So you have a headdress already. I would say play that up. Give me some sort of bird mask, but something to exaggerate the heaven's eye. Like, that is such an elaborate sounding concept, and your execution for it, it's not enough. I think that it needs to be a little bit more exaggerated, in my opinion, because if that's her main ability aside from flight, then that should be exaggerated a little bit more. And then moving on to flight, yes, she has wings, and it's actually kind of adding huge chunks of negative space to this design that could be filled up with something a little bit more interesting. The wings are kind of referenced, but I think you could definitely look at bird wings a little bit more, and you would get a ton more, a bunch more ideas for what you could do to make those wings a little bit more exciting. Different colored feathers, armor on the wings, just different layers of feathers, some kinds of gradients and stuff like that would definitely make that a more interesting wing, because right now it's one solid color, and it's a little underwhelming.
Some kind of subtle detail in the plumage could also help reinforce her power of the heaven's eye, just because there are so many crazy feather patterns that exist in nature.
Feather patterns that look like eyes, too.
Yeah, exactly. Like false eyes and things like that. I want to say, I don't know why she needs crotchless panties. Especially if she's a superhero for battle. There's no reason for that, and I don't know if the intent of this story is it's supposed to be sexual, or I don't know if it's relevant in the world that she lives in. So I do think there are some things that are interesting happening here in the silhouette. I like those big sleeves and the kind of neck piece that's kind of like a compass rose. I think that's interesting. But she isn't wearing a shirt. She has sleeves and then her titty, and then not even pants. It's like a belt that has these feathery things happening. And you can have the silhouette of the female body if that's the silhouette you want, but there's no reason for it to be nude. It's not practical. It really doesn't tell me anything other than the author had some things on his mind when he was creating this character.
Well, I think the other thing that we could say about this design in terms of the way it represents the female body is there were two other characters that this person submitted. One of the other characters was also a female, and she also had the exact same top where her breasts were exposed, and she, had an exposed thigh, and, very revealing, and it kind of detracts from the span of possibilities with character designs and kind of sacrifices new ideas for the sake of sexualizing the female body. If it limits the way that you represent women in your story, you might want to reconsider some of those designs.
That's a good point.
It's not inherently that there's something wrong with having a character in a sexually revealing outfit.
Especially if the story and the world that it exists in is meant to explore sexual themes.
Yeah.
Right, but where it becomes a problem is if you have multiple female characters who are all in provocative outfits and exposed and vulnerable, and then you have male characters where it's just not the same way. It comes off as demeaning, even if it's the sexual intent. I mean, if it's not equal between characters and it's always the female characters who are very, very exposed and don't seem particularly empowered by it, it kind of makes you question what the creator's intent is.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not saying don't draw pretty ladies ever or else. We're just saying you need to be mindful of when you do.
Because there are ways that you can design a character that has sex appeal but is still interesting. And I think that's the biggest problem for me with a design like this, is not necessarily that it is sexualized, but that it is sexualized and then there's really nothing else to it. It kind of just seems like the main draw for this character is the boobs or the belly button or the legs or the crotch or whatever it might be. And that's really because there isn't a lot going on with the rest of the design.
I would also say the feet, I think, need a little bit more reference. Her feet are massive compared to her body.
Yeah, that's very Yu-Gi-Oh!
Above, from her crotchless panties and above, she's very dainty and kind of elegant and slim, and she has this mysterious air, but she has these massive bird feet that don't look like they were really referenced particularly well. So maybe just looking at bird feet and talons, because bird feet are pretty dainty too, and it seems like maybe she uses her talons for attacking, but integrating the proportion of that animal anatomy a little bit better.
There's enough interesting about this character that it caught my attention, but I do think that there are some issues that need to be addressed, both from the standpoint of representation in character design with genders, and also just in terms of making an exciting design that informs an audience about what it is that this character does, or like what powers that she might have. So in a nutshell, play up that Heaven's Eye, reference more birds, and try to find more interesting solutions to having bird talons and bird wings, and consider the way that you're representing women in your designs. Again, it doesn't mean that you're sexist or that you are objectifying women by doing a sexy female design, but it is something to consider because people will interpret your designs as primarily sexual when they see something like this. And if you don't want that from your designs, then I would consider redesigning that.
Also, just making sure you have variety.
Yeah.
Like if you only draw sexy women, that's really questionable.
Yeah, and if you look at the third character, is a man, and he is completely wearing a full set of armor, is completely covered. So think about that. Maybe this character would look better in a suit of armor. Just think about those things, and I'm sure you will come up with a really clever solution for this.
Something that kind of kills me about this design is I do think the color palette is really nice.
Yeah, the color palette is really
nice. Especially
nice.
with that red, I just wish it were integrated somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe it can be used in the headpiece or something, because again, that's another thing that's drawing us right to the crotch.
Oh, in her eye. Put that red in her eye.
There you go. Yeah. So, those are my critiques for Aquila. I like that name, too. So we're ready to move on to our final critique of the evening.
So
All right.
Who's this?
So this is Benji's piece that they submitted to us. And this is Machine God, which is a pretty epic name, honestly. And then they have a little short description. The gods abandon us, so we made our own.
Wow.
This is my submission. It's the first in a small series of gods I'll be drawing with the help with concept ideas for a comic I'll be drawing. Thanks to your channel, I was inspired to draw again, so thanks for that. Thank you for your time, Benji. Thanks, Benji. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you, Benji.
Thank you, Benji. That's so cool to hear.
Yeah, so I chose the machine god because I really like robots, and I think that robots, like aliens and monsters and dragons and all these things we talk about, can be whatever you want, and we don't have to stick to tropes or conventions. And I think that the machine god is a really good place to talk about that, and that's kind of where my main critique will come from. So the thing right off the bat is, if you're going to describe this as the machine god, you have to live up to the title of god.
Yeah.
And this just feels a little like paramilitary, mechanical, and that's sort of it. And I want to go back to the quote where it's about like how the gods abandon them. It doesn't say that that's humans or anything. I think that this could have been made by the first celestial creature, or this could be like...
Ooh.
I think it just has to be a god. A good suggestion I have is to maybe think about broadening your horizons with your machine idea, and how the machine might not be based on things we understand. Maybe it's not metal, maybe there's no drills. I don't know much about your world. All I really know is that the gods abandoned them, so they made their own. Which I think is really cool, and I really like that.
That's a very tantalizing prompt.
Yeah, good logline.
Yeah, I like that a lot. The thing I have a critique about is that everything's kind of vague now, and I think that you're kind of straddling the line between detail and simplicity, and I think a direction has to be chosen a little bit more. It feels like you were leaning more towards something more detail-oriented and something really grandiose. But the way the materials and the textures are rendered, it just feels kind of flat. And I don't really understand if it's metal, or if it's moss, or if there's rock in there.
It kind of looks like wood.
Yeah, or wood. It's kind of just a mismatch of everything, and I think that kind of needs to be toned down a little bit. I just think that there's more avenues to explore. Like maybe they're all made out of porcelain, or maybe they're made out of asteroids from space, or maybe it's just like an energy source we could never comprehend.
Yeah.
I would love to see a porcelain robot.
Yeah.
That'd be so cool.
I think that also, for me, I feel like this, I don't know what the intention of your character is. If they're evil and they're turning on the people that created them, or what the deal is with that. But right now this feels very menacing. I'm not sure if that's your intention at all. I feel like trying to make the intention a little bit more clear through posing would definitely be a benefit. Because right now it's kind of just it's just standing there menacingly.
Maybe for something a little more specific and more godlike, you could look at the Falsi from Final Fantasy XIII, which are these giant machine gods, and there's no explanation for why they exist in the world, but they're incredibly detailed, incredibly grandiose, sometimes humanoid, sometimes not. Titans, essentially, that just exist, and it doesn't have to be like a big soldier body type for machine god. It's just this thing that maybe was cobbled together and has this menacing presence, and you don't know if it's good or bad or if it's dangerous, but you could get a little alien with it. And you have some of these like logos and wording on some of these scraps of metal on Machine God right now, and I think it would be more interesting if maybe you had your own alien language and these symbols that we can't identify to add to the mystery, different engravings, or is it like a religious symbol, like this kind of point of worship, the machine god, or is it something we're afraid of? Does it have warnings? Like, you can add that whole extra level of mystery by creating something less derivative.
Yeah, I think what Nick said about reconsidering what it means to be a machine is very important here, because like Claire is saying, I think something more religious needs to be implied with this. So look at different cultures and religions and different icons and what they use to symbolize gods in different religions. I would recommend looking at Bayonetta, and a lot of the enemies in that game are based off of Catholicism, and these very impressive, they look like they're part of a cathedral in stained glass, and very ornate. And you know, they're not machines in the fact that they have gears and they run off of diesel, but they do have a very inhuman element to them that would let you know that they are some sort of automaton, but not necessarily a living thing. So check that out. Yeah, or some different Yu-Gi-Oh monsters. If you look up Guiding Ariande, or honestly any of the Cubics
are based off Hindu gods, sorry. Oh, and actually another Yu-Gi-Oh one I think you should look at is you should look at the Qliphorts. They're based off Jewish mythology. They're like husks, and that has a very otherworldly presence, but it still feels machine-like. I guess also what I'm trying to say is, like, it doesn't need a humanoid silhouette. I think that you can experiment with floating parts and make things as abstract as you want. I mean, and also then you can inform the culture that created this god through that. So, I mean, maybe if your world is set in this this war-torn Earth, very similar to ours, then I guess it would make a little bit more sense for it to have materials like this. But I still think that that could be shown in a different way. I just think inherently just like big evil robot is kind of cliche, and I'd like to see more dealing with like the morality in the design and things like that. Like even the Iron Giant. Like he's humanoid, but it has a very distinct personality, and that says more about where he's from. He's from 50s. He landed in Maine. It's Cold War era, and it just tells more about the design and about him.
I would suggest looking at the game Horizon Zero Dawn, where the premise and the setting for the world is human life and society is kind of reset, and most of the fauna on Earth has been replaced with robots that have actually evolved to fill niches in the ecosystem. And it's kind of this meeting place between real life and machines, and a lot of them are very, I would say, deific. A lot of them have this, you know, it doesn't look like a human necessarily made it, but it's also mechanical, so it has that feel to it. So I would say look at that too if you're not really leaning towards the whole more like a golem kind of design. If you do want it to be, you know, human mechanisms, look at this game too. I think there's a lot of good inspiration you can get from that. One last thing, when you're doing things like printing words or fonts or patterns on a character, you know, make sure that you put thought into that. You know, it's kind of the same thing with the boots. Like, I get that it's like it's you know, scrapped together, you know, it's got danger all over it. But you know, it's worth going into, if you're using a digital media program, to actually go into the type tool and find an appropriate font and overlay that on instead of handwriting it, because those things go a long way. Because this kind of, you know, it looks like someone, you know, wrote on with a marker danger, and that kind of makes it seem less dangerous. All right, so are we feeling good about the god, the machine god?
It was mostly just conceptual. I think the machine god is a really cool idea, and I think that just exploring different ideas and trying to think about what makes a god and what makes a machine, and who is making the god and all that kind of stuff, because that can inform the design, and you could go a direction you were never thinking about, and then realize, like, finding out that maybe, oh, I don't want this to be a big humanoid machine, or going through all these different things and then figuring out you want to do it in a different way. So
okay, so thank you guys so much for submitting all of your designs. I know, unfortunately, that we couldn't take all of them, but don't worry, like we said in the last time we did this, we will be doing this again. So please don't stop drawing, don't stop creating. It's so cool to see all of our fans and all of the work that you guys do, and to hear that we inspire you to continue working. That feels really good. So thank you guys so much for your submissions. Thank you guys so much for 50,000 subscribers. Here's to another 50,000 more. Oh, inked.
Gaming.
Inked Gaming is our partner, and you should check them out because they have awesome gaming merch designed by independent artists, and all of your purchases a percentage of your purchases will go to support the artists who design the work. And plus also, if you use our link and the code subjectively10 at checkout, you get a 10% discount off of all purchases made on the website. So it's a pretty good deal. I recommend checking it out if you haven't already. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. It's so good to be able to record with the full Subjectively crew again. Hopefully we can do this more often.
Yeah, next week, baby. Thank you so
all right,
much.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.